Welcome, listeners. I am always excited to have my darling friend, my prayer warrior, Marrie
Yeah.
Simpson, with us. She is my functional health practitioner that I love. And you know, it was funny. I was telling Marrie before we got on, usually when I do this podcast, I let people tell their authentic story. And I was watching something on Marrie, a different video, a side video. And I'm like, I've never had her do that on the podcast. And your story, it helps people. It helps people learn, when you go through
Sure.
something difficult and you learn from it and you share it, you share that story. That's how we encourage and change the world. And so I just want to take a little time to get to know Marrie better. And we're going to do that first. But just so you know, this episode you are going to love because it's all about hormones. We're going to touch a little bit on perimenopause and menopause. And then we're going to talk about what we can do kind of naturally, right? Without hormone
hmm
replacement meds. Then we're going to delve into how do you know when it's time or if it's necessary. And Marrie can help us with all of that. And I just want to add one more thing that all of this is really hard to talk about. I feel like when we don't talk about metabolic fitness, metabolic health, and Marrie has taught me so much about that. So, listeners, I do have another episode, but what I want you to know is when I do my saddle up segment on Thursday, I'm going to go through what I've learned from Marrie briefly about metabolic health. And if you're interested, I have how to connect with Marrie in my show notes. It's even on my website. Or you can I'll put her website on in my show notes too. So that was a really long introduction.
That's
But
good.
Marrie, thank you so much for being here, for taking the time and welcome. And let's get to know you a little better. What led you to
Yeah.
do this phenomenal work for people?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. I always love being on your podcast and so appreciate you and right back at you with all those beautiful things you said about me because you are just a sweetheart and a prayer warrior for me as well. Um so I started in medicine. I always love helping people and so I knew that I wanted to go into medicine, always interested in it. I love learning. And so I became a physician assistant back in 1992, I believe it was. And I had worked in a nursing home for years before that and just always kind of in that area. Practiced family practice for a number of years, but I just was like, wow, I am putting people on prescriptions. I have 10-minute visits and we are not getting at the root. And I thought there has to be something more. I don't want to just keep doling out prescriptions. And so started in functional medicine. It took me a while to get my um, certification in functional medicine, probably about 7, 8 years, but I started in hormones actually, and then just kept going deeper and deeper and deeper with autoimmune conditions. I spent some time under Dr. Dale Bredesen, who wrote the book The End of Alzheimer's. He's had a couple subsequent books, but really looking at how do we prevent disease and how do we prevent the need for prescriptions. And I use this analogy all the time: bad, better, best. Bad doing nothing. Okay, so we don't want to have high blood pressure and not treat it. We don't want to have high blood sugar and not treat it. We want to understand what we have. And if we can prevent the need for medication, that's going to be best. But better is going to be that we use medication. So medications are indicated, and we definitely I feel that traditional medicine has its place, but it doesn't do the best job at disease prevention, at increasing our health span. So I started in functional medicine, and I wasn't the healthiest, but I started implementing many things. I've been overweight for since actually I was a kid, and didn't get to do the things I wanted to be in pom poms and cheerleading. But my weight really held me back in a lot of areas. So became had difficulty getting pregnant because of my weight, because of PCOS. I had a diagnosis of fibromyalgia. I had many symptoms. Again, the hormone imbalance. I had chronic achiness and pain. I had insomnia. The list was long. I started addressing all of these things from a functional medicine approach as I learned functional medicine and how to do things. But my weight would not. My, it was I just was stuck. I had tried hundreds, literally hundreds of things, whether it was, diet and exercise. I would maybe eat 500 calories a day and I would exercise 3 or 4 hours, and thinking if I just worked harder,
Yes.
then the weight's going to come off. And after I started my own practice, I left the clinic practice and about 4.5 years ago and started Elevate Health and Wellness, which is what I work under right now. Then I went through a program myself that was really helpful. It didn't have the functional medicine aspects, but it was helpful for losing weight. Really training your body on how to detox, how to optimize fat burning, how to really support the body through the process, because we know that toxins are stored in fat. And so as we are working on burning fat for fuel, we are going through detoxification. Also focusing on balancing hormones and optimizing energy and really getting at the root of so many pieces, looking at gut health, looking at brain fog, looking at autoimmune conditions and all of that, just all bringing lots of pieces into it. So I've created my own version of this with genetics, with continuous glucose monitors, because these pieces really help give us understanding of what's going on behind the scenes. Our body gives us clues, whether you have digestive issues, whether you've had a diagnosis of cancer, that is a clue about immune health, whether you have brain fog. All these pieces are clues. And so we put that detective hat on and we think, okay, what's going on behind the scenes? And then we look at labs. The continuous glucose monitors give us information. Genetics help me personalize, fine tune what recommendations that I would typically have. And so over the course of the last 4 years, I've continually added and developed the 12-week program for what it is today. And it was my personal transformation. It was learning all of the pieces that can keep people stuck. And it isn't a one size fits all, as we know, right? So that, coupled with my dad, and my dad started becoming ill 15 years ago, and he had diabetes and he started gaining weight around the middle. But then came the tremors, it came some personality changes, frequent falls, and eventually he was diagnosed with Parkinson's. And that really helped me. And that's around that time I was doing the brain optimization with Dr. Dale Bredesen's training and really looking into what is going on with my dad. And come to find out that we know 88% of all chronic illness comes from a metabolic disorder. And he certainly had that. He had the weight around the middle, he had the diabetes. And so just kind of working along, we have managed to halt progression for many, many years. And now, as he's now in his 80s, 84 to be exact, we've seen continued progression, and he has good days and bad days, but he is 100% reliant on other people to care for him with eating, with walking, with caring for anything that he needs. It's based on somebody else caring for him. So his health span was cut way too short. We know the average lifespan is 77, and the average health span is 65. So it's like, what are we going to do with that last 10 to 12 years? And we want to lengthen lifespan and lengthen health span so that people don't have to suffer like I see so many people do. So, all right. Too long, I know, but
Amen.
thank you.
I love that. I love learning that about you. And
Yeah.
that is why you're the amazing woman that you are.
Oh,
Because
thank you.
you've learned and you share it. And that's what we need. That's what we all need to do, is share the things we learn. So
Yeah.
I have so many questions popping up. One thing I
Yeah.
just wanted to mention
Mm-hmm.
that I've heard you say before is it's important to know our why. So we're sitting here today, and as a woman, I know my why is I want to feel better. I
Mm-hmm.
want to grab my grandchildren, pick them up, carry them down the street. I want to run. I want to play. I want to feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and there is a part of it that I want to look good, but I think even
Mm-hmm.
more is I want to feel good now
Mm-hmm.
at this stage in my life. But here's the thing that so many women my age, and I didn't even think I was going to mention this, but it kind of goes along
Mm-hmm.
with this. They're like, oh my gosh, why I've gained weight. Women who have remained at a steady, great weight all their life. And all of a sudden they're like, what is going on? Why
Mhm,
am I suddenly like, I can't do anything? And I've been there. I have
mhm.
been there when I
Yeah.
couldn't really do anything to lose. And I wasn't obese and it wasn't a big deal, but it does. Me being 5 pounds more than I need to be affects my blood pressure.
Mhm, mhm,
So learning the how to be metabolically fit changed my life too. And you
mhm.
helped with that. So let's
Sure.
talk about that. Is that hormone related that suddenly we wake up and we go, everything that I used to do isn't working?
Yeah. It is hormones, and it's more than that. I feel that the modern conveniences of life have have increased that propensity for weight gain just because we're in front of screens, we're rushing around. And like you, I have 10 grandkids, I have aging parents, I have 3 kids, I have a husband, I'm running a business, and things get kind of crazy. And so I know it's really important that we manage that cortisol, because when cortisol goes up, and oftentimes it's really, we're going to see blood sugar elevation, which is going to have influence on metabolic health. But that cortisol elevation will completely override our sex hormones. So that's one piece. The other piece is we're not moving as much. And so we know that muscle will deteriorate after the ages of 30. We start to lose about 3 to 8% of our muscle, and it depends on the person, right? And so as our muscle goes down, our metabolic, activity slows, and we can start to see weight gain. So that's a piece. So
Mhm.
cortisol elevation, lack of muscle and muscle tone, muscle strength, lack of sleep. So if we're in front
Mhm.
of screens and we're stressed, we often don't sleep as well. That has a big impact on cortisol, but also on our metabolic health and just our nutrition. Our
Yeah.
nutrition is foundational. It's a foundational pillar. And so when we're stressed and tired, we may not feel like cooking those veggies and getting clean, healthy meals,
Right.
nutrient dense meals. And so those are other pieces. When our estrogen starts to decline and our progesterone, particularly our progesterone first, then we can have estrogen dominance. And that also can have a tendency to increase our weight. And so there's just all these little pieces that add, it's like a puzzle of 10,
Right.
15 pieces that add to that. Mhm.
Well, okay, so let's talk a little bit. I don't like, I think most people kind of know what perimenopause is and what
Mhm.
menopause is, but when you were
Mhm.
just saying that the estrogen increases, is that perimenopause that happens or more?
Yeah, so perimenopause, we're going to see progesterone start to decline first. And when that declines, we have more incidence of estrogen dominance. We see perimenopause in the late 30s and typically in the 40s. And it's not that hormones are just like going down, down, down. We're seeing shifts, we're seeing things that are up and down. Progesterone is the hormone that we see decline first. And so we want to have estrogen and progesterone balanced. But if we're seeing a decline in progesterone and estrogen staying high, that creates estrogen dominance. So having too much estrogen and too little progesterone. And that in and of itself can cause heavier periods, maybe fibroids,
Mhm.
dense breast tissue, PMS. Those are some of the common signs of
I think I
estrogen
had all
dominance.
those.
Yeah. And we can see that even before perimenopause. I see that in a lot of individuals. And we have synthetic estrogens that people can get exposed to that will also compound that. And
Mhm.
so we want to be careful around, plastics and receipts and different things like that. Our personal care products that
Mhm.
can have that influence on the synthetic estrogens as well. So
Okay, that's good
I
to
don't know if
know.
that answers your question.
No, it does.
Yeah.
And that kind of talks about perimenopause.
Hmm.
Okay, so then and when you talk about like not sleeping as well. So then
Hmm.
I went ding ding. So your hormone
Hmm.
then is starting to affect your stress, your cortisol because you're
Hmm.
not sleeping as
Hmm.
much. So
Hmm.
that's playing a role too. So at
Definitely. And progesterone is particularly when we think about progesterone, that is the hormone that is more calming. And
yes.
it does help to promote good sleep. And so in that perimenopausal time frame, sometimes we'll use some bioidentical hormone, just progesterone, before bed to help people with that sleep and feel more calm and type of thing. So it can be really helpful.
Yeah, in fact, I did do that, and
Mhm.
I did not have hormone cancer, so that is not
Yeah.
what led. But I did do that, and I do
Mhm.
remember the relief I felt.
Mhm.
And I was able to sleep. And then, la 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 la, time moved on, and menopause kicks in. So
Mhm.
tell
Mhm.
us just really quick what that is, and then things kind of changed again for me.
Right. So we define menopause as not having a period for 12 months. And that's when it's kind of typically menopause. And that can be rarely in the 30s, but typically late 40s and 50s. So the average age is about 51. And with that, the estrogen starts to decline. And sometimes it's going to bounce around. So when women go into the clinic and they say, I want to have my hormones checked, we could look at estradiol. But it isn't as accurate unless we're doing a specific test where we're testing at a particular um, time of the month, unless you're postmenopausal. And so there's the main hormone that they look at is what's called FSH, if we're going to be doing a test to assess menopause in women that haven't had a period. So during postmenopause, then we see very little, a little bit, but very little estrogen and progesterone production. And then those symptoms typically are going to be night sweats, hot flashes, vaginal dryness, lower libido. And we can see some of these in that perimenopausal time for sure. Sleep changes, energy changes. We can start to see a decline in bone density after the hormones, after period hasn't been present for a year. That's when typically they're going to recommend that women have a bone density, just to assess kind of where things are at. See some hair changes. So those would be symptoms of menopause.
Okay. So now what I want to do is I want to talk about, and I think we've kind of covered it, but what are things that we can do to help our hormones naturally?
Mhm, mhm.
And then I want to talk about, because it is a trick to figure out your hormone
Yeah.
levels. And how do you know? And there's all kinds of, I think there's controversy about, is it good? Is it bad? And I think you really
Mhm,
want to catch where you're at with
mhm,
those, and it
mhm.
fluctuates. So I want to get
Yeah,
into that a little bit too. So what
sure.
can we do? Because I can't take hormones,
Mhm.
and I am
Right.
on an estrogen blocker since breast cancer. And I
Mhm,
know, 1 in 8 women might be going through what I'm going through who are listening to this. But I just
mhm,
have to ask too a little bit for my own well-being.
mhm.
What can I do?
Yeah, sure. Well, these are great questions. And so I'm going to kind of try to answer each one of those. Natural ways, and that's one of the things that I work on with women in the program that I have, and it is helping to balance hormones. And so nutrition is really important. We want to, and for you too, Lesa, not being able to use hormones, but being able to really optimize health. Stress is going to be a huge thing to manage. But then nutrition, bringing in cruciferous vegetables is going to be helpful, whether you're on hormones or not. Genetics is going to give us a clue about how we metabolize estrogen. And then you mentioned some testing. I recommend Dutch hormone testing because we're going to look at, where those hormone levels are, but then also, and also cortisol, because that is going to have an influence on our sex hormones. The other piece that it looks at is metabolites. And when we have estrogen, whether it's being made by our ovaries, or we're using a bioidentical form of estradiol, then we want to make sure that it's safe, right?
Mhm.
Again, whether it's our body producing it or um, it is being given. And so we can look to see how your body is metabolizing it. Genetics influence that from the standpoint of detox and methylation. I know I don't want to get too sciencey, but we want to look to make sure that it's going down the right pathway and not producing metabolites that would increase risk for, in men, it would be prostate cancer, and in women, breast cancer or
Right.
potentially ovarian. And so if people are going to consider using hormone replacement therapy, it's ideal to use that in the within the first 10 years. It's going to have a much more impact on brain health, cardiovascular health, bone health, just overall. When we start it later than that, it doesn't have as much benefit.
Okay.
But the key is we want to look at each woman individually and see what their risk factors are. What is their metabolic health like? Because we know that if metabolic health is not good, we increase risk for cancers, not just breast, but other cancers.
Right.
We want to look at genetic pieces to see, are you methylating well? What are your detox pathways? And
Right.
we want to look at history. Do you have that history of estrogen dominance where you had dense breast tissue, you had fibroids, you had heavy periods, you had PMS, all of these other pieces? Because if you have that in your history, it can give us clues about what risks you may have in using bioidentical hormone therapy. So we want to take each individual and kind of look at all of these pieces. Answering the thing that we can do from, what can we do from a natural standpoint? It is going to be whole foods, healthy fats, adequate protein, getting in movement, managing cortisol, managing stress. And we know that alcohol will raise aromatase, and that then can increase risk of breast cancer. And so if women are using, more than maybe a glass of wine a week, we want to be very cautious with that. And then also, if women are going to use hormones, and I do bioidentical hormone therapy myself, I test, we get tests done, but then also I use some products that are going to really help with that methylation piece. So there's a couple supplements to bring in. And even in individuals that aren't using hormones, if there are symptoms of estrogen dominance, then they can be very helpful. So
Right.
I think I kept going.
No,
Correct.
I love that. And
Yeah.
this is what I want to jump in and say,
Yeah.
because I know that if I were sitting here listening, who I am,
Yeah.
I would want to know more. I would want to get this done. I would want to figure this out. And this is what I want the listeners to know. Marrie is here for you. So
Yeah.
connect with her, because that is how you're going to have someone who can scientifically look at your body. And I've done it. Look at your genes. Look at, is this safe for you to use this hormone? Would it be beneficial? And I kind of like hearing, I think I'm almost 10 years out of, you know what I mean? So maybe, and I did do a little bit of hormone therapy. So maybe I did it at really the right time, and that was all that I needed. But that's what I don't want this, because we're throwing out a lot of tests and things. What I want you to know is Marrie can lead you, and she's led me to which test works, and she can learn about it. And then you so beautifully will share what supplements work. You give us, links to a great place to get them, where we maybe save a little bit of money on a high quality product. So this doesn't have to sound overwhelming or scary.
Right.
It is for you to just investigate, do it for yourself, because in order for you to be there for all the other people in your world, you got to take care of yourself. And Marrie, I think what's so interesting is I did all of this, except there were two pieces in my journey that I was missing. And one was, thank you for talking about wine, because I had my breast surgeon on, who has a private breast center. She said, wine, alcohol causes breast cancer. And she actually said, Marrie, that the Surgeon General, before the one we have now, wanted to put that on every alcohol bottle, so that women knew, just like cigarettes say this causes lung cancer, and for some reason it didn't happen. That's a big deal. And do you know, I grew up in the era of, I'd be stressed out all day, working with the kids, and then I'd take my glass of wine to calm down. That was the worst. And I, like, almost every night would have a glass of wine. I wasn't a drunk, but that wasn't healthy, and I didn't feel good. I didn't feel good, but every night I'd do it again, because I was like, oh,
You
I'm
feel
so
good for
stressed out.
maybe 20, 30 minutes.
Yes. So the piece, so I was, and I think I was maybe white knuckling it a little bit. Oh, I better fast this long. I got to work out this hard. And what I learned, I made it through chemo beautifully, because I chilled out. I ate well. I went on walks. I lifted at home. I didn't kill myself. And I became so fit.
Yeah.
So that's like a lesson that we can all hold on to. So I just had to jump in and say, Marie
Yeah.
can help you with
So
all of that. She's helped me.
yeah. No, and that's so true. And it is hard because I feel that a lot of our social events are based around alcohol.
Mhm.
And not all, but many are.
Yes.
And I feel that it has become this in society. So, and it is something that I also was doing and actually the Lord has said, "Hey, you know what? This is not what I have for you."
Mhm.
And I recognize that I wasn't getting drunk and what have you, but just being reliant on it. Oh man,
Yeah.
this has been a stressful day. I want to have a glass of wine when I get
Yeah.
home, or choosing the restaurant I want to go to because this is,
Yeah.
and I don't want to have anything control me. And I felt that it was controlling me. And so just praying to say, Lord, take away those desires
Yes.
and fill those with desires for things of you. And if you want me to step away from this, I know it can be not in my own strength. And
Yeah.
it was a prayer for a long time for me, but I do feel confident that's what he wanted for me. And when you mentioned earlier about the whole why, my why, kids and my grandkids, I want to chase them, I want to run with them, I want to,
Yeah.
go skiing with them in the winter, and I want to slide and whatever. But it's I want women to know that their bodies can heal. That
Oh,
is my
yeah.
biggest thing. And
Yeah.
I want them to know that they were created for purpose. And it isn't to be sick and to just settle.
Yes.
And it isn't about medications and supplements. Sure, they're going to play a little bit of a role, but it's about these foundational pillars that we can put in place, and just little steps here and there that we can start that healing process.
Yeah.
And so that's my why. I want women to know that they can feel good, that they can heal. And with all of that knowledge out there, I mean, it's just like, oh my gosh, everywhere you turn, it's this.
Mhm.
Like there's a lot of confusion. But when we pause and we listen to what the body's telling us,
Mhm.
what's our gut like? What's our brain like? What's
Yes.
our, all of these pieces, then we can start learning what's going on. And that's what functional medicine is all about, is looking at the root rather than, okay, take this, take that, take this.
Yes.
So at any rate,
I
that's
love
my
that, and
why.
we're all
Yeah.
unique. We're all unique
Yeah,
little
for sure.
individuals,
Yeah,
so
for
every one
sure.
of us is
Yeah.
going to need something different,
Mm-hmm.
not like, "Here you go. Let me
Right.
give you the same dose I give this,
Yeah.
400-pound man."
Mm-hmm.
It's like, "What?" It's like
Right.
my husband and I
Right.
go, "He's, like, almost twice my size." I
Mm-hmm.
mean, he used to be, now it's probably I'm getting a little closer, but no.
Oh.
And then we'll get, like, a dosage that's the same, like, of
Mm-hmm.
Advil or whatever. They tell us to take the same amount. I'm like, "Okay,
Right.
that's just bananas." So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that's why I
Yeah.
love working with you, because it is so
Sure.
individual and you're really looking at me. And I think, for those of us out there, that is where it starts. Listen to
Mm-hmm.
your body, listen to
Mm-hmm.
yourself, because you're gonna learn. You can be a little detective and learn a lot
Mm-hmm.
even without the test.
Mm-hmm. For
Like,
sure.
yep,
For sure. That is the number one place to start, is getting a really good history, understanding what were your periods like, even if you
right,
are postmenopausal, what were they like before?
right.
Did women have miscarriages? That gives us a clue. Where does your mammogram show dense fibroglandular tissue? That gives us a clue. I mean, all of these pieces give us clues. And then looking at traditional labs that your practitioner may order, that isn't necessarily where optimal is. For instance, we talked a little bit about metabolic health before. We want to see a fasting blood sugar under 84.
Yeah.
I see so many times where blood sugars are like 99, 110, and it's like, well, okay, we'll check it again in 6 months or a year. And it's like, we don't want to wait. Again, we know that 88% of chronic illness is from metabolic health. We want to nip that in the butt and get after it soon. So, knowing what those normal parameters versus what is optimal can be really helpful. So,
Yep. Okay, now we're almost running out of time, but
yeah,
I
yeah,
just
yeah,
have
yeah.
to ask one more little thing,
Mm-hmm,
because you mentioned that you use hormone replacement therapy.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So, when is it appropriate? And I know it is, like, dependent on the individual, but when would
mm-hmm,
that be an appropriate
mm-hmm,
for someone to get on bioidenticals
mm-hmm.
or what have you?
I think early on, if we're going to use hormones again, we're going to have much more benefit if we start them within
Yep.
10 years. If women are having significant, and a lot of times when I was working in the clinic practice, it would be like night sweats and hot flashes. That would be the driver of people using hormones. And I think that it certainly is helpful. When I have women go through the program, when we start working together, we can put together pieces, and I already alluded to the nutritional aspects
Mhm.
and the alcohol being one, right?
Yep.
Which is can be hard for people, but then also not pushing our bodies. And like you said, you used to go to the gym, and I was working out so much and I wasn't seeing benefit. I had night sweats and hot flashes when I was still menstruating because I was just pushing myself
Yeah.
too much. And that just makes it worse. So if you're having night sweats, hot flashes, sometimes people have a lot of brain fog. Um, I think it's then time to look at benefits versus risks. We want to
Right.
make sure that the benefits outweigh the potential risks. And what are those risks?
That's what I
And
was going to ask.
right, most of the time we can get night sweats and hot flashes to resolve with natural methods. And so again, stress, sometimes we'll use some black cohosh, sometimes rhubarb. So estrovera is rhubarb, that can be helpful. But most of it is going to be lifestyle and nutritional pieces that can really shut down the night sweats and hot flashes. So
Well, and I have to say, Marie,
mhm,
so if I occasionally, like once a month, might have a glass of wine,
mhm,
I get it. I
mhm,
start having
mhm.
hot flashes. I
Yeah,
don't ever have them unless, and that's probably because of that estrogen. So you're saying like do everything naturally that you can.
yeah.
I think that's what you're saying.
Well, I think that just makes sense, right? To
Yep.
prevent disease. Now, it may be too hard for people. And so then we want to look at if people's metabolic health, if their blood sugars are elevated, their insulin levels are elevated, and they're using alcohol, I don't think people should use hormones. I don't
Okay.
I don't believe they should. And I know Nasha Winters, she wrote the book Metabolic Approach to
Yeah.
Cancer. She would say, absolutely not. And so that's if we're doing the right things, then I think that estrogen replacement therapy has a place and is definitely beneficial.
Mhm.
And it is going to be helpful for bone density. It is going to be helpful for muscle. It is going to be helpful for cardiovascular health. So there is a lot of benefits to using it in the right individuals. If people have strong family history of breast cancer, if we look at genetics and there's some risks, we can mitigate those risks with lifestyle and a couple supplements to make
Yep.
it safer. And so it doesn't shut the door on it at all. Um, E3 is a very weak estrogen. It's estriol. And so using a little bit of E3 vaginally oftentimes is acceptable. And of course, I always want you to talk with your practitioner about things, but for vaginal health. And so that would be something that would be certainly an option for
Well,
vaginal
I'm gonna
health.
even, like, throw that in. Even me, who's on the estrogen blocker, my oncologist said
Hmm.
that that's fine
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
prescribes it.
sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's going to depend on some practitioners are not aware of the functional medicine, integrative
Mhm.
medicine, and some of those types of things. And there are others that are practicing traditional medicine. So it is helpful to have one that has some knowledge and is trained. And it's not that, I don't like those things that, they come out what your doctor isn't telling you and your doctor is bad. It's not that.
Yeah,
It's that they're
no.
not they're not knowledgeable. They don't and they're knowledgeable, but they just aren't aware of the functional medicine pieces and what we look at and how we want to address things early and prevent disease rather than waiting for it to occur. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I just
So,
have to add before we go, I think
mhm,
that's been so important to me, and I feel like God has always led me to physicians who are open to it so that I
mhm,
can work
mhm,
with you, Marie,
mhm.
and my oncologist. Now, my
Sure.
oncologist is not a functional assessment doctor, and I
Mhm,
never would have thought I would have gone to the U of M. But when
mhm.
I went there, and it's Dr. Blaze, if anyone wants
Yeah.
to know, when I went to her, she looked at me and she
Mhm.
said, "Nope, you don't need a port." There were different things. And
Sure.
some of the oncologists that I talked to said, oh, don't cold cap for your hair. It won't really work. She said, cold cap for sure. And she said, make sure you use ice on your hands and feet so I don't have any neuropathy. Do you
Sure.
know how rare it is for patients to hear that from their physician? And so I would just like to get that word out. Like, it's
Yeah.
not I'm on this team or that team. We're working together here. And I feel like
Right.
I have been blessed with those physicians, and I would really like to share that with more of them, share my story, which I'm
Yeah.
open to do, which
Yeah.
I'm
I
moving
think you
towards
should.
doing. Yeah.
Totally. Women can learn so much. And you want to be an advocate for them, right? You've gone through
Yes.
it. So, yeah, I'd
Yeah.
love for you
And
to do
helping
that.
those doctors too understand
Right.
how they
Right.
did things right for me and
Yeah.
how they can do that too. So, all
Yeah,
right,
for
my
sure.
dear friend, I've taken up so much of your time. I
No,
feel
it's
like
good.
this was so good. And like there
Yeah.
was so much information. And listeners, I promise I'm going to do an overview on my Saddle Up segment, and I'm going to talk about metabolic health. And just go to Marrie. If you're ready to delve in and you're ready to take care of you, it's like the great first step. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for being
Yeah.
with
Thank
me.
you. Love you.
God bless
And
you. Take
yeah, thank
care.
you. Yeah. Bye.